At about 9:40 that Friday morning, several gunshots cracked through a crowded second-floor hallway outside a science classroom at Tilden High School. Students were changing periods when one 15-year-old boy took a bullet through his back, while two others were wounded nearby. Another teenager broke from the chaos, ran from the building, and drew classmates plus security into a chase through the surrounding block. The wounded boy reached the University of Chicago hospital, but died that afternoon, while the runaway faced an adult murder charge by mourning. What looked like sudden hallway violence had actually started days earlier with dice, missing money, gang pressure, and a former basketball MVP feeling cornered. Before Joseph White became the teenager hiding beneath the porch, he had already shown enough promise for adults to imagine something better. During the previous school year, Joseph earned solid grades and received the Most Valuable Player trophy from his basketball team. Those achievements never made him a guaranteed star, although they proved he was handling school while standing out athletically. His mother, Karen White, worked as a supervisor in a Chicago newspaper's accounts department and watched that progress from their West 51st Street home. Later, she would struggle to understand how the same boy moved from report cards and basketball recognition toward Mickey Cobra politics, stolen stereos, and a loaded pistol. To understand that slide, you have to look at the neighborhood Karen entered long before Joseph reached high school. In 1971, when the White family moved into New City, roughly 1 mile from Tilden. At that time, the surrounding section was overwhelmingly white, while nearby industry still carried the fading influence of Chicago's Union stockyards. Over the next 2 decades, blockbusting pushed racial turnover, redlining restricted mortgages, businesses withdrew, property values dropped, and city services became thinner. The stockyards had already closed by the early 1970s, leaving back of the yards and New City with fewer stable jobs. By Joseph's teenage years, those changes had produced sharper segregation, economic stress, and neighborhood boundaries controlled heavily through gang affiliation. Karen had never joined a street organization, but her children quickly taught her that their block sat inside Mickey Cobra territory. That local identity mattered once Joseph entered Tilden High School, where several rival groups shared hallways that never respected outside boundaries. The Blackstones, Mickey Cobras, Black Gangster Disciples, Vice Lords, Latin Kings, and Satan Disciples all maintained a presence around the campus. Tilden had opened in 1889 with a respected academic reputation, yet the early 1990s version operated under nearly constant pressure. Gang members roamed between classes, fights broke out almost daily, while teachers sometimes locked classroom doors to keep hallway trouble outside. For teenagers navigating that building, reaching another lesson could mean crossing somebody else's section without showing fear or disrespect. The weakness surrounding Tilden became obvious during a separate confrontation shortly before Joseph's case ever reached the headlines. A member of a black gang reportedly slapped the girlfriend of a Latin Kings leader, triggering a response from armed adult members. Those men arrived from a nearby Latino neighborhood and surrounded the school carrying shotguns, prepared to retaliate against black students. The lone school police officer believed a regular assistance request might bring only 1 patrol car, while an emergency call could bring 2. With almost no backup coming, he personally persuaded the Latin Kings leader to call the armed group away. That close call reportedly taught several black gangs that official protection could disappear quickly, encouraging temporary cooperation between old rivals. Among those rivals were the Mickey Cobras and Blackstones, whose uneasy peace later placed members around the same gambling game. Joseph was already drifting toward that street world by spring 1992, even while Karen felt increasingly unable to pull him back. In May, police detained him, with 22 other youths at a Southside park where about 50 suspected Mickey Cobra associates had gathered. Officers accused members of the group of throwing bricks, stones, and bottles at people who were not dressed like them. That case never reached court, so Joseph returned home without a serious legal consequence attached to the incident. 1 month before the shooting, Joseph and another youth were spotted removing cartons containing stereo equipment from a railroad boxcar. Police later recovered those stereos from Joseph's home, while juvenile court accepted his guilty plea for the theft. The punishment brought little visible interruption, which meant another serious warning passed without changing the direction of his choices. Karen could see her influence weakening while neighborhood reputation, gang loyalty, and public toughness gained more weight around her son. By November, Joseph's story had moved from basketball recognition to Mickey Cobra association, police contact, theft, and one unresolved school dispute. That dispute still looked small from outside, but the money belonged to people who treated unpaid debts as public disrespect. Before returning to Joseph, another 15-year-old was moving toward that same hallway through an entirely separate family struggle. Dondon Lawson was remembered as funny, emotional, interested in dancing, football, and video games, with people describing him as tender-hearted. His mother, Linda Lawson, had recently regained custody after Dondon spent time living with an aunt and later his father. Linda began picking him up after school, then tutoring him for roughly 2 hours before allowing him to head home. She worried about his friendships, although relatives insisted Dondon had never formally joined a gang. The problem was that several gang-affiliated boys were lifelong friends, so avoiding them completely meant cutting away people he had known since childhood. Linda had already watched that social circle shrink through violence long before her own son became part of the count. She later said Dondon attended funerals for boys his age once or twice every month during the period before his death. Those losses made her supervision tighter, but they could not remove him from every hallway, corner, friendship, or neighborhood connection. Dondon was trying to move among gang-affiliated classmates without fully becoming one of them, which demanded constant judgment from a teenager. That distinction would matter deeply, since the dispute carrying him toward danger had never involved him at all. Several days before the shooting, Joseph White joined the dice game inside an upstairs locker room or washroom at Tilden. Mickey Cobra and Blackstone students were gambling together, something their temporary truce made possible despite older hostility between both groups. A Blackstone-affiliated student began losing cash in amounts ranging from $10 to $20 during the game. The disputed total was later described as roughly $80, but Glover testified that the money belonged to his gang's leader. That detail changed the whole temperature, since losing another person's street money could bring pressure far beyond an ordinary school wager. When Glover tried reclaiming the cash from Joseph, other Blackstone members began gathering as the argument grew more serious. A school police officer stepped in before anyone started swinging, then escorted Joseph and Glover toward the disciplinarian's office. Both boys received 3-day suspensions, which removed them from campus without settling the debt waiting outside school. On paper, administrators had handled another gambling dispute, but the suspension only separated both sides while the pressure continued building. Once Joseph went home, the matter followed him through people who believed he still held money belonging higher inside the Blackstones. Years later, Joseph's uncle Kenneth Wright offered another version while speaking during the sentencing hearing. Wright claimed a teacher had collected money from the hallway floor after the original disturbance interrupted the dice game argument. According to his account, students still believed Joseph possessed the cash, even though that teacher had allegedly taken it. Wright also claimed the teacher was later fired. although the record never settled every detail surrounding that allegation. From Joseph's position, dudes were demanding money he possibly no longer had, while refusing payment could look like deliberate disrespect. During the suspension, 2 youths reportedly delivered a warning that Joseph would get whipped or banged unless the money returned. Joseph understood that message as a promised beating, although he testified that he did not know whether anyone would bring weapons. He kept the threat away from Karen, partly to avoid appearing frightened or cowardly before people watching his response. Karen later believed her son viewed their family as powerless against gangs, leaving him unwilling to involve her directly. Going to police also felt unrealistic within a neighborhood where young black residents often viewed officers as another hostile force. Instead of seeking protection through adults, Joseph prepared according to the code shaping him around West 51st Street. A neighborhood youth who heard about the dispute approached Joseph with a small semi-automatic pistol shortly before his return to Tilden. The seller loaded the weapon, test-fired it, then transferred it to a 15-year-old expecting trouble from Blackstone members. Joseph carried that gun towards school on November 20th, reportedly anticipating an attack while crossing territory controlled by the rival group. He later claimed Blackstone members chased him during the walk, although he reached Tilden without pulling the weapon outside. Once inside, he kept the pistol concealed in his waistband, turning every confrontation afterward into something far more dangerous. At that stage, the possible beating had gained a loaded answer, even though nobody had yet fired anything. Later that morning, Joseph approached the top of a second-floor stairwell while walking beside a female classmate who eventually testified for him. Dondon Glover stood ahead inside a hallway section commonly occupied by Blackstone students, with several other boys gathered nearby. Dondon Lawson was among them, although he had never played in the dice game or claimed any missing money. Glover crossed Joseph's path and asked what had happened to the cash, reopening everything the suspension had failed to resolve. Another unidentified voice reportedly said they had not come to talk, then threatened to put Joseph's head inside a locker. As the group tightened around him, Dondon remained close through friendship and positioning, while Joseph carried the pistol nobody else could see. At the top of Tilden High School's second-floor stairwell, Dondon Glover crossed Joseph White's path and demanded the money from Monday's dice game. Joseph did not hand anything over, choosing instead to insult Glover while refusing repayment in front of several Blackstone-affiliated students. That response changed the confrontation, since Joseph was carrying genuine fear, but he was also protecting his pride before people measuring every reaction. Another boy reportedly threatened to put Joseph's head inside a locker, then members of the group began closing around him. Joseph later testified that punches landed, forcing him downward while he caught himself with both hands and found no clear route away. Robert Habib would later build Joseph's defense around that position, arguing that the 15-year-old was surrounded, struck, and unable to escape the group. Prosecutors viewed the scene differently, emphasizing that no witness established that Dondon Lawson or anyone nearby carried a knife or firearm. Joseph said he reached into his waistband while beginning to rise, then fired the semi-automatic pistol before reaching a fully standing position. He also claimed one student jumped either to avoid the weapon or knock it aside, causing additional shots during the confusion. Police described roughly 4 rounds fired toward the skirmish, while teenagers nearby scrambled through a hallway crowded between morning classes. One bullet entered Dondon Lawson's back, passed through his heart, and dropped the boy who had never gambled against Joseph or demanded money. 2 more students were wounded during the burst, including one teenager reportedly struck in the foot as everyone nearby tried escaping. Joseph maintained that he never selected a target, explaining that he wanted the crowd off him rather than anybody dead. That account left an important question for the eventual jury, since frightening a group looked different from firing repeatedly inside that group. Whatever Joseph intended, Dondon received the fatal injury while standing beside lifelong friends whose dispute had nothing to do with him. Joseph turned from the stairwell and ran through Tilden, while students, security personnel, and others chased him from the school into the surrounding neighborhood. He eventually crawled beneath a nearby porch where police located him after searching the blocks around 47th Street and Union Avenue. Officers arrested Joseph, although the small semi-automatic pistol that caused the shooting was never recovered by investigators or school officials. Back inside, principal ordered classrooms locked down, fearing panic, retaliation, or another weapon moving through the crowded building. Police screened students through metal detectors as they left, hoping somebody had carried the pistol away, but the search produced nothing. Dondon was rushed to the University of Chicago hospital, while Linda Lawson learned from a neighbor that her son had been caught in the shooting. She hurried toward Tilden, then continued to the hospital, where the room's atmosphere told her the outcome before anyone explained it directly. Linda had driven Dondon to school that morning and expected to collect him after classes, continuing the routine she created after regaining custody. She had been tutoring him for roughly 2 hours daily, trying to raise his grades while pulling him away from trouble surrounding his friendships. Instead, Dondon died at 15 after years spent watching boys his age disappear through shootings and monthly funerals across Chicago's South Side. Across town, Karen White was washing her hair when officers began pounding on the family's door less than an hour after the gunfire. Police told her Joseph was armed and running, warning that officers might shoot him if he appeared holding the missing weapon. Unable to reach her husband, Karen called her sister-in-law, who drove her toward Tilden while police still searched nearby properties. She arrived as officers pressed Joseph against a vehicle and placed handcuffs around his wrists, producing relief before the murder charge became real. At the 51st Street station, Karen found him wild-eyed, frightened, and hysterical, seemingly unable to understand how far those few seconds had carried him. Karen remained at the station until late that night, when authorities confirmed that Joseph would be indicted for killing Dondon Lawson. By the following morning, one mother was arranging life after her son's death, while another watched her child enter adult criminal court. Newspapers initially described Dondon as a boy standing in the wrong place, while early accounts made Joseph appear to have entered Tilden firing without provocation. The dice game, gang-owned money, suspension, threats, and claim beating appeared gradually after the first public image had already taken hold. Mayor Richard Daley quickly shifted attention toward Tilden's metal detectors, which administrators had operated only on selected days to reduce expenses and disruption. Joseph's family hired Chicago attorney Robert Habib, who tried stopping newspapers from publishing his client's name on the grounds that Joseph was still a juvenile. The effort failed once prosecutors charged him as an adult, while the hearing itself placed his identity into further news coverage. Habib believed public opinion had already convicted Joseph, so he delayed trial proceedings for over 1 year, hoping memories would fade. That strategy lost ground in June 1993, when a national magazine feature returned attention toward Linda, Dondon, and the family's grief. Prosecutors also rejected Habib's attempts at negotiating a reduced plea, reportedly arguing that public pressure made any agreement politically difficult. Before the trial began, Karen approached Linda outside the courtroom and apologized for the life taken through her son's decision. She explained that Joseph claimed he had fired to frighten the group, only to kill Dondon while destroying several families together. Linda reportedly did not answer with hostility, although nothing about their positions carried equal consequences or matching forms of loss. One woman would never bring her son home again, while the other faced watching hers disappear through prison gates for decades. Joseph White's trial opened on January 19, 1994, more than 14 months after the shooting inside Tilden High School. DeJuan Glover testified about losing money during the dice game, explaining that the cash belonged to leadership within the Blackstone Rangers. He also described Joseph refusing repayment while insulting him, giving prosecutors evidence that anger and disrespect accompanied whatever fear Joseph carried. The female student walking beside Joseph supported portions of his account, including the confrontation waiting near the second-floor stairwell. Habib argued that several boys surrounded his client, struck him, blocked his exit, then forced a desperate response from somebody expecting serious harm. Habib admitted Joseph committed an offense by bringing a loaded gun onto school property, but he asked jurors to separate that decision from intentional murder. His argument weakened whenever prosecutors returned to one basic fact: since nobody proved DeJuan or the surrounding students possessed any deadly weapon. Habib later said knives would have strengthened the self-defense claim, yet Joseph refused to testify that his attackers carried them when they did not. Prosecutors argued that Joseph purchased the pistol, carried it across Blackstone territory, concealed it throughout school, insulted DeJuan, then fired into an unarmed cluster. Joseph's stated intention to clear the crowd remained difficult to reconcile with Delondon's bullet wound through the back and heart. After several hours of deliberation, jurors returned at roughly 10 p.m. with the strongest verdict available against the teenage defendant. They convicted Joseph of first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and unlawful use of a weapon on school property. During sentencing, Joseph's uncle Kenneth Wright interrupted from the gallery and offered the disputed account involving money collected by a teacher. Wright admitted Joseph had no business carrying a firearm, but argued that students demanded cash his nephew possibly no longer possessed. The judge rejected that explanation as sufficient mitigation, then returned to Joseph's earlier theft from the railroad boxcar 1 month before Delondon's killing. The judge believed that Joseph's earlier contact with authorities had brought too little consequence, allowing increasingly serious behavior to continue unchecked. In March 1994, he sentenced Joseph White to 45 years inside the Illinois Department of Corrections. The former basketball MVP, who had earned respectable grades, now faced adulthood in prison after gang involvement, theft, threats, pride, and gunfire. Joining the Mickey Cobras did not explain every decision, although it placed Joseph within expectations involving territory, reputation, loyalty, and responses to disrespect. His neighborhood's disinvestment, Tilden's disorder, weak police protection, firearm access, and personal choices all converged inside one crowded school passage. Principal responded by expanding Tilden's community security staff from roughly 10 workers to 42 people after the killing. She recruited parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, and other neighborhood adults who personally recognized students moving throughout the building. That approach strengthened her reputation inside Chicago public schools, eventually contributing to her promotion as a regional superintendent during 1995. Mayor Daley pursued a broader answer, pressuring approximately 27 Chicago high schools that still lacked permanent metal detector systems. Within days, the city council supported his campaign, while Tilden's part-time screening schedule became evidence of a preventable security failure. Chicago's response eventually widened beyond metal detectors into suspensions, expulsions, zero-tolerance rules, and stricter methods for removing students considered dangerous. Those policies spread through other districts, although later critics questioned whether exclusion addressed gang pressure, poverty, unstable neighborhoods, or failing institutional trust. Delondon remained the person most easily lost inside those larger debates, despite having no part in Joseph's original gambling dispute. He stood beside DeJuan through friendship and location, then received the bullet produced by another boy's deadened fear. Linda lost the son she drove to school and tutored. Karen lost the future she imagined, while Tilden became a national lesson in school security. Joseph's fall never happened through one mysterious leap from basketball recognition into a murder conviction inside Cook County Criminal Court. Smaller choices accumulated through Mickey Cobra association, an arrest that went nowhere, stolen stereos, gambling, concealed threats, and the decision to purchase a pistol. Adults missed several chances to interrupt that movement, yet Joseph still carried the weapon, rejected repayment, and pulled it inside the hallway. An $80 debt became a 45-year prison sentence, a funeral for Dondon Lawson, and policy changes reaching far beyond Tilden High School.